No, definitely. Yeah. It feels like that scenario definitely doesn't play out the same way without the Carmelo Anthony thing fresh in people's memory, which is, not to say that white people don't have some secret affinity for hurling the N-word at people on a playground, but it definitely feels like there's this kind of rise in white consciousness of their own race, where there's so many things throughout our, throughout my life that I've observed where it's like there's tribalism allowed by everybody except for white people. They're just not allowed to express any kind of solidarity or pride in being white, right? And even you, I think, would acknowledge that, right?
No, I mean, I acknowledge it to a certain extent. I think you're very misinformed. Dylan Roof had people trying to donate to him. Many mass shooters who were white had donations funds started, but white-owned donation vehicles like GoFundMe, GiveSend, and Go shut those down. So look at Shiloh Hendrix, for example, Kyle Rittenhouse, which I think Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do anything wrong, but there was this significant push by non-white people and white people to demonize Rittenhouse. He still was allowed to have a GoFundMe. So I believe white people kind of started that, you're going to do something messed up and we're going to throw our financial might behind it. So what you are, you're not even a racist, which that already makes me kind of look at you weird. There's only one race, human beings. You break us down beyond the skin, we're exactly the same. A few fast twitch muscles, slow twitch muscles might be a little different. I don't know. That's arguable. But the thing is, you're really just prejudice. And you're really you're punching down on black people because you're disillusioned with things that your race has created, or you're ethnic. That's what you're doing. You're ethnocentric, but we'll just say racist for the sake of this video. Sure. So you're disillusioned with the way your race has manipulated things because it doesn't work in favor of a significant segment of your race. Black people have been throwing your people alley-oops since 500-600 years ago. Literally, the only reason you were able to have slaves, which built this country, and I'm not saying in the fact that we just did the physical labor, but created an economy that was strong enough to immediately compete with the world powers because you had an unpaid labor force working in the fields, working in factories. Black people in Africa went into interior of Africa and got those slaves for you because you guys couldn't survive for 3 days in the interior of Africa. That's a fact. We brought those slaves to the coast, so all you had to do was load them up and take them to wherever you want them to go. That's called an alley-oop. Us doing something for you that benefited you. Would you argue that point?
Well, I would argue several of the things that you said there.
No, specifically the alley-oop part,
yes,
where blacks went into the interior of Africa, got slaves, brought them to we were complicit, but we brought those slaves to the coast, which made it easier for you to take them and profit from their labor.
I would not argue that black people enslaved their own people and sold them to white people. I would not argue that. That definitely happened.
Right.
I would argue that it wasn't as big of a deal in terms of turning America into a superpower as you're trying to claim. Africans also enslaved each other, had slaves in Africa. It never turned Africa into a superpower having slaves. There were slaves all over the world, basically. So really, picking cotton, there wasn't even that many slaves who were brought to America. So I just don't really think, I don't look around at the civilization, Western civilization, and think, oh, wow, I owe this to black people.
But I'm not saying you owe us anything. What I'm saying is you're very ignorant, because when you say race, you're talking about a bunch of people all over the world. Your ancestors came from Europe. Mm-hmm. So you have a very narrow view of the situation. And that's probably because you spent more time being a junkie than actually studying this shit. I'm being real with you. When you say race,
you're a junkie. You've done more research than myself, I think.
You did say you were doing drugs.
Messed around with drugs, but
you're a junkie. I never touched drugs. I never smoked weed. I never drank a beer. Listen, I never smoked weed, never drunk a beer, never smoked a cigarette. If you did that, you are a junkie as far as I'm concerned. I'll tell Les she's a fucking junkie. I don't care. What I'm telling you is, if I haven't done it, you decide to play in this arena because you're talking about racial superiority. Yeah. So we're going to do that. So what I'm telling you is the race is more than just in your country. So would you say that slavery had no benefit to the colonial or imperialism of white people?
I mean, in the long run, it had a huge negative effect.
No, I'm talking about initially. So the white empire did not benefit in any significant way from slavery.
It had probably a small benefit to the small people who owned slaves who personally.
You mean the Queen of England? The king too? That's what I'm saying. Your view is very narrow.
Almost 4,000 enslaved Africans were brought directly to what is now the United States from Africa during the transatlantic slave trade.
But what he said about race encompasses more than just America, because you're not just American. Where do you descend from in Europe?
Oh, the vast majority were sent to South America and the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Only about 3% of that total. Oh, around almost 400,000. Yeah.
But do you know who owned those plantations in South America and the Caribbean? White people.
Okay.
So I'm asking you, you're trying to minimize the impact of slavery, but you're talking about race. When you say race, you're going beyond the boundaries of America. You're telling me that the British Empire, the Spanish Empire, the French Empire, they didn't benefit in any significant way from all those sugar plantations in the Caribbean, all those freaking banana plantations in South America. They didn't benefit from none of that.
Well, no, of course they benefited from the plantations.
In a major way?
And the trade. Yes, but the thing is, those wouldn't exist without the white people who went and made them. That's the whole thing. Like all that wealth that was sitting there in Haiti and Jamaica, white people went and were like, we know how to extract this and how to turn it into something. Otherwise, it would just be sitting there.
And they wouldn't exist without the Africans who went into the interior of Africa to capture slaves and bring them to the border like a drive-through.
Yeah, but
isn't that an ingenious plot hatched by these evil white people, to be fair?
But the point I'm arguing is he's trying to minimize the contribution black people have made to everything white people, most of the things white people have done that are significant. And I'm saying, no, everywhere you find a successful white person, there was a black person who also in many ways was benefiting, but who basically threw them the alley-oop. I'll give you another example. If you I thought you wanted to say something.
Let's focus on that one first, before we do more examples.
Two things real quick. Think about it logically. If millions and millions of slaves went to South America, went to Brazil mostly, places around there, and the slaves were so beneficial, those places should be the big superpowers because they had more slaves. The slaves are not really the big deciding factor. The reason America became the superpower is because they had the best white people basically who went and made the country. That's first of all. Second of all, whenever you get into these racial conversations, it always turns into, let's talk about history. Let's talk about 400 years ago, because black people don't want to talk about what's happening right now. The stuff I just brought up with the murders, and there's a whole bunch more things I'm happy to bring up. People don't want to talk about that because it's way harder to defend. We want to go back 300 years and be like, what happened? What happened there?
Believe me, we're getting there, but I'm not going to negate or ignore the historical context because I know that you haven't really considered these things. But what I'm telling you is most of the money made on those plantations went back to the European countries that the people owned them descended from. They paid tax to the crown. They had their main abodes back in their home nation. What I'm telling you is this: the reason America did so well economically is because we were the last people to outlaw slavery. So it makes sense that America economically rose above the rest of the European nations, because like 1810, before 1810, Britain outlawed slavery and said, if you get caught moving slaves, we're going to destroy your ships. Well, guess what?
You're welcome.
The Americans continued to sneak slaves in, and they also did something called the intra-American slave trade, where they start moving slaves around between the Caribbean and in America. So if you hold your slaves the longest, so you gotta have a free labor source the longest, that means you're gonna be able to profit from those slaves the longest, which will what? Bolster your economy. Adam, for example, you're a business owner. You own a business?
Technically, but I don't have employees.
Okay, Adam has employees. Adam, imagine a guy with no jumper west across the street. He doesn't have to pay any of his hosts. He has no overhead. Everyone's just showing up working for free. In the realm of capitalism, would he not have a significant advantage over you economically because you have to pay everybody?
Sure, yeah.
Even provide health insurance in some cases if you have a certain amount. So we're not going to eliminate or negate the fact that America had a major alley-oop from black people in two ways. We not only brought the slaves to the coast of Africa for you to take them wherever, we also inside of America worked for free for a significant time longer than European slaves, which bolstered the American economy.
Yeah, I just don't think it's that big. I think you're blowing it way out of proportion. We can agree to disagree on that.
No,